They called him the demon of the sky. To his men, he was a genius. To the Japanese high command, he was a nightmare they could neither predict nor stop. Yet today, his name is nearly forgotten, buried beneath medals, smoke, and moral questions no history book dares to answer. It began not with glory, but with silence. In the spring of 1945, Tokyo slept under a moonless sky. The war was already lost, though no one dared to say it aloud. The emperor's voice had not yet surrendered, but hope had already turned to ash in the hearts of men. And then came the sound, not of thunder, but of 1,000 engines rumbling across the Pacific, carrying death inside thin shells of silver. At their head was General Curtis LeMay, a man barely 40, with the cold precision of an engineer and the heart of a storm. He didn't believe in mercy or heroics. He believed in results. And results to him meant ending the war, by any means necessary. When the first waves of B-29 bombers reached Tokyo, the night became daylight. In just 6 hours, 100,000 souls vanished in a storm of fire. LeMay watched from afar, not with joy, but with the calm of a man convinced he was right. To him, every burning city was one step closer to peace. To Japan, it was the awakening of a terror they had never imagined. In underground bunkers, officers whispered his name, LeMay. Some cursed it, some feared it, and some, in their final letters home, begged their gods to stop the man who had turned the sky itself into a weapon. But history is cruel. When victory came, the world celebrated the generals who landed on beaches, not the man who burned the skies. Curtis LeMay became a ghost, remembered only by those who saw his fire and survived it. Curtis LeMay never smiled in photographs. His eyes, sharp and calculating, seemed to measure the world in angles, fuel loads, and flight paths. To him, war wasn't about hatred. It was an equation, and he intended to solve it. He came from Ohio, the son of a factory worker. He built model planes before he could shave. In his notebooks, he didn't draw soldiers. He drew blueprints. By the time America entered the war, LeMay had already earned a reputation: cold, unshakable, and frighteningly efficient. He had no patience for tradition, and even less for emotion. When other generals planned glory, LeMay planned logistics. The Pacific was bleeding. The Japanese Empire still held dozens of islands, and their cities were untouched. The B-29 bomber, America's most advanced weapon, was supposed to change that. But the missions failed. The bombers flew high to avoid anti-aircraft fire, and their payloads scattered uselessly into the sea. Morale collapsed. Crews froze. Results vanished. LeMay watched silent. Then, against every rule in the book, he made a decision that horrified his peers. He ordered the bombers to fly lower, under the radar, beneath the clouds where Japanese guns could tear them apart. He ordered the bomb base filled not with armor-piercing shells, but with napalm, the new and terrible invention that turned cities into kindle. It was madness, they said. It was suicide. But LeMay's mind worked differently. He saw no difference between morality and mathematics. If flying low burned more fuel, but killed the war faster, it was worth it. If 10,000 died so that 10 million might live, he called that victory. The first raid under his command burned Tokyo to its bones. The flames were so fierce, they pulled oxygen from the air, creating firestorms that boiled rivers and melted steel. LeMay watched from his operations room, his face pale and unreadable. Japan's generals called it hell from the sky. They didn't know his name yet, but they would. March 9, 1945. Midnight over Tokyo. The sky was clear, too clear. A wind from the south whispered across wooden rooftops, carrying the smell of the sea and something else: fear. Above the clouds, more than 300 B-29 bombers cut through the dark, engines droning like an approaching storm. Their target was the beating heart of Japan. Inside the lead plane, a pilot adjusted his oxygen mask. Below, a million sleeping civilians had no idea that in minutes their city would vanish into flame. The crew had been ordered to fly at just 5,000 feet, dangerously low. At that altitude, they could see every rooftop and the people who would soon be caught in the inferno. The bomb bay doors opened. What fell was not metal, but fire. Clusters of M69 incendiaries, each packed with jellied gasoline. When they burst, they sprayed molten napalm that clung to skin, wood, and stone alike. Within minutes, entire neighborhoods were burning. The heat rose to over 1,000 degrees. People drowned not in water, but in the boiling rivers they leapt into to escape. The flames roared so loud that radio contact broke down. Crews looked out their windows and saw a sight they would never forget: a living city collapsing under a single orange wave. From his command post in Guam, LeMay listened to the reports in silence. No cheer, no sorrow. Just calculations. Maximum effect, he murmured. Fuel efficiency optimal. His staff couldn't tell if he was proud or haunted. By dawn, 16 square miles of Tokyo were gone. Over 100,000 people lay dead. More than Hiroshima, more than Nagasaki. It was the most destructive air raid in human history. Japanese officers who visited the ruins the next morning wept in silence. The air still shimmered with heat. Somewhere in the ashes, a single word passed from mouth to mouth: LeMay. The name now had a face, and Japan's generals finally knew the fire had a master. In the days that followed Tokyo's destruction, Japan trembled, but so did the men who carried out the mission. Some crews broke down mid-flight. Others refused to look out the windows, afraid of what they'd see below. But when they returned, their commander stood before them, his posture rigid, his voice flat. "Gentlemen, you have shortened this war." There was no comfort in his words, only certainty. He didn't speak of victory or revenge, just of efficiency. To LeMay, emotions were distractions. Hesitation was treason. He treated death like arithmetic. He didn't celebrate the firebombing of Tokyo. He simply marked it as success in his logbook. His peers couldn't understand him. "Kurt, how do you sleep at night after ordering that?" one general asked. LeMay looked up from his maps. "I don't. I planned the next one," he said. To the Japanese, his strategy was terrifyingly precise. Every few nights, another city vanished: Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe. He didn't aim for factories or bases anymore. He aimed for willpower. Destroy a nation's ability to fight, he reasoned, and the war ends faster. He called it psychological bombing. Japan called it hell. But behind the cold eyes was a man who knew exactly what he was doing and what it would cost him. He read every pilot's casualty report, every mission log. He visited damaged aircraft, touching the bullet holes with his bare hands. "You did your job," he told one crewman with a missing arm. "That's all history will ask." The irony was cruel. The same precision that terrified Japan also began to isolate him from his own countrymen. Other generals called him ruthless. Politicians whispered monster. But LeMay didn't flinch. He had seen what hesitation cost in Europe, in the skies over Germany. He believed that morality in war was just another form of delay. As Japan burned, one question began to haunt even his closest aides. Had Curtis LeMay saved humanity from a longer war, or sacrificed his own humanity to do it? By midsummer 1945, the map of Japan looked less like a country than like a wound. LeMay's bombers had erased 67 cities. From above, the islands glowed at night like dying coals. Factories were gone, trains silent, families scattered. Even the emperor's palace trembled beneath the thunder of the B-29s. In the command bunkers, Japanese officers stared at reconnaissance photos of their own ruins. One whispered, "It is not war anymore. It is punishment." Another answered, "It is LeMay." The name had become shorthand for the apocalypse. Yet the general himself grew quieter. Each new mission brought no triumph, only confirmation that his logic worked. He rarely left the operations room, living among charts and wind speed tables.